Hey, Mike here. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Dark Poutine early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime.
Welcome back to Dark Poutine. I'm Mike Brown, and I have a problem with soy sauce.
And you were just telling the countdown to F off, which is hilarious. Because Mike hits a button, and it goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and he's like, come on.
Yeah, F off.
Let's get started.
This one should be an interesting one. It's a case that I was familiar with, obviously, before I started writing.
And I'd never heard of it, so this is a new one to me.
There you go.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Dark Poutine podcast are solely those of the producer and do not necessarily represent those of Curious Cast, its affiliate, Global News, nor their parent company, Chorus Entertainment.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. Listener discretion is strongly advised. We're not experts on the topics we present, nor are we journalists. We're two ordinary Canadian schmucks chatting about crime and the dark side of history. Let's get to it. Put on your toque, grab yourself a double-double and a Nanaimo bar. It's time to scarf down some Dark Poutine.
You are responsible for obtaining and maintaining at your own cost all equipment needed to listen to Dark Poutine. Dark Poutine can be addictive. Side effects may include, but not be limited to, pausing and questioning the system, elevated heart rate, pondering humanity, odd looks from colleagues as you laugh out loud at work, family members not into true crime worrying about you. Positive side effects may include some perspectives and opinions that you disagree with, as well as some wokeness and empathy. If you don't think Dark Poutine is for you, consult your doctor immediately.
Joyce Carolyn Stevens, the daughter of a preacher from Houston, Texas, and Rose Marie Turford, a Canadian nurse and suburban mother, became infamous as the real-life Thelma and Louise. Their cross-border crime spree in the mid-1990s stunned communities from Houston to Toronto as they lured, robbed, and humiliated unsuspecting men, all while eluding law enforcement. The case, with its bizarre twists, elaborate disguises, and a mysterious figure named Avery, captivated the public and left a trail of questions about motive, manipulation, and the dark side of friendship. This is Dark Poutine episode 377, The Canadian Thelma and Louise, Rose Turford, and Carolyn Stevens. Before we get going on this episode, I really want you folks to have a listen to a show promo. It was sent to me by my friend Mike from the Murder Mile podcast in London. He and I met up when I was there in 2022. I realized later, during our meetup, he'd bought a round and I didn't, so I owe him. When he asked me to present his promo in our show, I thought, what better time to make amends? So here it is, and I love his show. I really do.
Nominated as one of the best British true crime podcasts, Murder Mile is hailed as a masterpiece of compelling storytelling. Research using the original police files. Over 300 episodes, Murder Mile has covered hundreds of crimes you won't hear anywhere else, as well as solving cold cases, unearthing new evidence, and even discovering a serial killer no one even knew existed. For a truly original podcast, subscribe to Murder Mile.
Now back to our show. It was a cold, gray morning in Toronto. Inside a modest apartment, police officers moved with quiet urgency, executing an arrest that would bring to an end one of the most bizarre and sensational cross-border manhunts in recent history. A UPI article reported, quote, The smiling faces of both women were plastered on the front pages of Toronto's major daily newspapers Thursday as they were arrested on immigration charges without incident Wednesday night. Each woman is charged with 4 counts of aggravated robbery and kidnapping. They will be returned to the United States where they face up to 500 years in prison. End quote. Just months before, both women had led unremarkable lives and had no criminal records. Nothing in their background suggested they would one day be at the center of a media firestorm dubbed a real-life Thelma and Louise by the American press. Joyce Carolyn Stevens was born and raised in Houston, Texas, in a household where modesty and religious conviction were paramount. The daughter of a Texas preacher, Stevens grew up in a family where faith and propriety shaped daily life. Those who knew her in childhood described her as quiet and reserved, a young woman who rarely drew attention to herself. Her upbringing was stable and routine. Stevens attended local schools in Houston where she maintained a low profile. Teachers and classmates remembered her as timid and mousy, someone who kept to herself and seldom participated in social activities that defined adolescence for many of her peers. She was not particularly athletic or academically distinguished, but she was considered reliable and polite. Her introverted nature meant she had very few close friends and often retreated into books or solitary hobbies rather than joining group events. After finishing school, Stevens remained in Houston, living with or near her family and continuing to attend church. She began working a series of jobs, eventually finding employment as a psychiatric aide at a local hospital. Again, in her professional life, Stevens was seen as dependable, quiet, and tended to avoid workplace drama. She wasn't married, she had no children, and there were no reports of significant romantic relationships, stressors, or personal upheaval during this period. Carolyn was not known for taking risks or seeking adventure, and her life before her criminal involvement was largely uneventful. Friends and acquaintances described her as gentle, even passive, and there was little in her background to suggest the dramatic turn her life would eventually take. Her religious upbringing and quiet demeanor made her an unlikely candidate for the notoriety she would later achieve. That said, Stevens was quietly troubled. Earl McCauley, a Houston engineering assistant who knew Carolyn for 5 years, believed that she was either under someone else's control or experiencing a profound psychological shift, remarking that, quote, another personality took over, end quote. According to McCauley, a notable transformation occurred in Carolyn Stevens around 1992. She vanished for several months and upon her return explained that she'd been hired to investigate satanic cults. McCauley observed that Stevens changed from being, quote, laid back and easygoing to becoming, quote, withdrawn, nervous, and paranoid, end quote. Stevens confided in him that she had discovered those conducting the investigations were as, quote, bad as the people in the cults themselves.
That's a red flag parade right there.
Yeah.
Sudden disappearance, grandiose and unlikely stories, followed by a total shift in behavior.
Mm-hmm.
It's sounding like delusion, paranoia, maybe dissociation, but it kind of feels like a mind that's somewhat fractured to me.
The cheese is slipping off the cracker a bit.
Yeah, or just somebody who wants to be a pathological liar for attention, right?
Yeah, there's something at her job as a psychiatric hospital aide where Stevens' path would eventually cross with Rose Marie Turford's. Rose Marie Turford was born and raised in London, Ontario. She came from a stable, middle-class family and was described by those who knew her as a good person all her life. Her parents, Liz and Ernie DeRoche, were devoted to their daughter and remained supportive through the most challenging periods of her life. Like Carolyn Stevens, traditional values, a strong work ethic, and strong emphasis on family ties characterized Rose's upbringing. She maintained close relationships with her parents and later her own children, reflecting the importance of family in her life. Rose pursued a career in nursing, a profession that suited her caring and responsible nature. She trained and became a registered nurse, a role that required both technical skill and deep empathy. Her early career was spent in Ontario, where she built a reputation as a reliable and compassionate healthcare professional. Colleagues and friends saw her as someone who was dedicated to helping others and who took pride in her work. Rose married Brian Turford, a computer executive, and together they had 3 children, Kyle, Ryan, and Corey. The family lived a comfortable suburban life, first in London, Ontario, and later relocating to Houston, Texas, when Brian's work required frequent travel between the U.S. and Canada. As a mother, Rose was actively involved in her children's lives, driving them to baseball practice, volunteering at school events, and ensuring a nurturing home environment. She was known as a suburban wife and mother who balanced the demands of her career with her family responsibility. The Turford family's move to Houston was a significant transition for Rose and the rest of the family. Brian's job often kept him away during the week, leaving Rose to manage the household and care for their children on her own. This period was challenging as the distance placed strain on their marriage and left Rose feeling isolated in a new country. Despite these difficulties, she continued her nursing career, eventually accepting a position at a psychiatric hospital in Houston. Colleagues and neighbors in Houston described Rose as a devoted mother and a hardworking nurse. She was seen as the quintessential suburban mom, maintaining a well-kept home and providing stability for the kids. Her life, on the surface, appeared orderly and conventional. Rose Marie Turford was regarded as responsible and trustworthy. She had always followed the rules and cared deeply for her family. Rose's story before her infamous partnership was one of quiet dedication to her profession, her children, and family. She was a woman whose life revolved around the needs of others and whose choices, until that pivotal meeting in Houston, reflected the values she'd been raised with back in Ontario. Rose Marie Turford and Joyce Carolyn Stevens first met while working at that hospital in Houston. Their professional roles brought them into regular contact. The hospital environment, which was often demanding and emotionally charged, fostered a sense of camaraderie among staff. Turford and Stevens found themselves drawn together by mutual understanding and a shared sense of humor. As colleagues, their friendship deepened outside of work. They spent time together socially. In 1993, Carolyn Stevens confided in Rose Turford, telling her that a wealthy individual had selected the Turford home to receive free landscaping work. Stevens explained that the benefactor wished to remain anonymous, and drawing on her own landscaping experience, Stevens completed the work herself. Carolyn later identified the mysterious benefactor as Anne Kerrigan, who she claimed was married to a shadowy man named Avery, the supposed influential head of an international private investigations firm.
Okay, so that's a first opportunity right there for her to call bullshit.
Right.
Rose is a grown-ass adult.
Yeah.
And she should be asking, why would some wealthy individual want to do my landscaping?
Yeah.
Why would they want to be anonymous?
And maybe Rose did ask those questions. I mean, we only get as much of the story as people report.
Yeah, but still her yard was done. So,
Right.
She obviously didn't say, yeah, no thanks, and start questioning the trustworthiness at best or the sanity at worst of this work colleague, but she didn't.
Yeah, in 1994, Stevens moved in with Rose and her family. A combination of practical need and emotional support prompted the decision. Stevens, who was struggling to find stability, found herself without a permanent place to stay. Rose, empathetic and nurturing by nature, offered her a home, welcoming Stevens into the household she shared with her husband and children. This living arrangement deepened their bond, allowing them to spend even more time together and providing Stevens with a sense of belonging she'd been missing. The close quarters also intensified Stevens' influence on Rose Turford. The first signs of discord appeared when Carolyn Stevens started arriving at the Turford home with visible injuries, bruises, cuts, and sometimes more severe marks. She explained these wounds with harrowing stories, claiming they were inflicted by the mysterious figure she called Avery. According to Stevens, Avery was powerful and dangerous, and she had become inextricably involved with him. She claimed that Avery abused her physically and psychologically, and that he was capable of harming anyone who disobeyed him, including Turford and her children. Stevens' accounts of abuse were vivid and alarming. She said that no matter how hard she tried to escape him, Avery always managed to find her. The effect on Turford was profound. As a mother, the idea that her children could be targeted filled her with dread, making her increasingly susceptible to Stevens' influence.
Yeah. Again, Turford is a capable adult.
Rose was a nurse. I mean, she was an educated person.
And right here, she's not calling the police. She's not kicking this woman out of her place. And I want to ask, what about her husband? Why isn't she talking to him about? I doubt that she had, right? She seems to be more than willing to go along with all of this to me. And, to be honest, I really feel for Brian, her husband.
Yeah.
I know the schlep of traveling a lot for work, right?
Yeah.
He's probably out there working his butt off trying to get ahead, probably misses being at home, probably misses seeing her and the kids. He's a working schlub on the road a lot. And can you imagine how upsetting it would be that your partner, first of all, brought someone like this into your home while you're out there hustling for a good future for your family? Your partner's playing fantasy and about to explode your lives forever, right? Like, I feel so much for this guy.
I look at Rose and I think, what? How? I think we're on the same page with this one.
Okay. Yeah.
I wonder, how did she get sucked into this? And maybe she was just like, well, this is fun. Like, I have this boring life, this boring everyday life. And, what Carolyn Stevens is bringing to the table sounds a little more interesting and fun. So whether it's true or not doesn't even matter. It's just way more fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like an internet fantasy.
Yeah.
Instead, play World of Warcraft or something. About a year after Carolyn moved in with Rose and her family, Stevens began drawing Turford into a series of elaborate psychological games. According to private investigator Nancy Smith, these activities included scenarios where Turford was required to scrub temporary tattoos from Stevens' body within a set time limit. The stakes were high. If Turford failed, Stevens warned that Avery, the mysterious figure at the center of their shared mythology, would punish her. Smith recounted that Turford sometimes discovered Stevens chained and handcuffed to a bed in a hotel room. In these instances, Turford was compelled to solve riddles or puzzles to locate the keys and free her friend. These games, initially appearing as bizarre rituals, gradually escalated in complexity and intensity. Police later asserted that this pattern of manipulation and challenge ultimately evolved into the criminal acts for which the pair became infamous. Carolyn described Avery as someone who demanded obedience and threatened brutal consequences if his instructions weren't followed. These communications often contained specific instructions for threats, pushing the women to take actions they might otherwise have resisted. For Turford, the lines between reality and manipulation began to blur. She was isolated in a new country, her marriage was under strain, and the constant pressure from Stevens' stories of abuse and Avery's supposed commands eroded her sense of safety and autonomy. Maybe.
As far as isolated in a new country excuse goes, she's in Houston. She's not in Lagos. They have Starbucks, right?
And Whataburger. Whataburger is amazing.
Secondly, she's working. She's not isolated. And her marriage is under strain. Well, yeah. And she certainly isn't helping the fact that it is she?
No.
Right? Like, all of these, oh, she was a poor victim. I'm not buying at all.
Everything that I'm writing here comes from court documents, comes from other reports, those kind of things. I write what I learn. Our opinions are for these breaks.
It was under this supposed psychological pressure that the first signs of criminal intent began to emerge. Stevens insisted that Avery was watching them and that their only hope of protecting themselves, and especially Rose Turford's children, was to comply with his increasingly bizarre and dangerous orders. The initial tasks seemed innocuous, but soon escalated to more serious requests. One of the earliest indications of this shift was Avery's supposed command that the women travel to Colorado. This move disrupted the family's routine and heightened Turford's sense of vulnerability and isolation.
Yeah, sure. That's one way to put it. But I have a simpler perspective on this. Rose wasn't some naive victim.
Right.
She is probably bored out of her mind. Suburban mom, alone with the kids while her husband traveled, stuck in a cycle of work, chores, the PTA meetings. Then this strange, damaged woman moves in, spinning stories and creating drama, and suddenly things feel alive again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not safe, but exciting. And for some people, boredom is more dangerous than fear because it makes the wrong thing feel like a rescue.
I like that. The wrong thing feels like rescue. Yep, totally. I know I've been guilty of that in my life.
The devil will find work for, well, if her hands are idle. How did she find time to do this stuff? Go unchain people
Good
in
question.
hotel rooms?
Stevens' manipulation deepened as she claimed Avery was now targeting them for a specific purpose.
to carry out missions against other men on his behalf. Carolyn told Rose that Avery had instructed them to contact a dating service and begin preying on its male clients. The rationale, according to Stevens, was that Avery required money and information from these men, and failure to comply would result in dire consequences for both women and Rose's family. As the psychological pressure mounted, Rose reportedly confided that whenever she expressed a desire to leave their criminal activities behind, she was threatened with dire consequences. Stevens, invoking Avery's authority, allegedly told Rose that Avery would kidnap her children if she refused to comply with his demands. When Carolyn and Rose disappeared shortly after Mother's Day, a note was found claiming that Avery had kidnapped them. During the investigation, police recovered numerous letters. Most of them were written from Avery to Rose, outlining her next assignments and jobs. The authenticity of Avery remained a central question. Was he a real person, a manifestation of a psychological disorder in Stevens, or simply a fictional construct designed to control Rose Turford? Some believe that Rose was an unknowing pawn in this dynamic and that she was just a puppet. But as we mentioned, Matthew and I feel it's a little more complex. The first criminal acts committed by the pair were meticulously planned. Guided by Avery's instructions, they began assembling kits for their operations: wigs, handcuffs, duct tape, even a stun gun. They wrote out detailed scenarios for each encounter, scripting the roles that they would play and the steps they would take to subdue and rob their victims. Their primary method involved exploiting dating services and personal ads to identify and lure male victims. The pair, often using aliases and elaborate disguises, would arrange meetings with men who believed they were connecting for companionship or romance. The encounters typically took place in hotels or, at times, the victims' own homes. Once alone with their targets, Stevens and Turford would initiate what appeared to be consensual scenarios, sometimes encouraging the men to undress or participate in role play. The situation would quickly turn threatening. The women would handcuff or tie up the men under the guise of playful intimacy before revealing a firearm and demanding money, credit cards, and valuables. In several cases, the victims were left naked, bound, and humiliated, only realizing too late that the encounter was a ruse for robbery. Houston police officer Alex Hardesty later remarked on the sophistication of their operation, quote, "The robberies were well planned. They stood out from the pack. They had duct tape, they had handcuffs, they had a stun gun," end quote. The pair's victims were primarily men seeking companionship through dating services in Houston, Galveston, and Las Vegas. Reports indicate that at least 10 men fell prey to their scheme, although authorities suspected that there could have been more. The men, often affluent or middle-aged, were selected for their perceived vulnerability and financial means. The audacious crime spree escalated. Police departments across Texas and Nevada found themselves drawn into a complex, multi-jurisdictional investigation. The women's carefully orchestrated robberies left a trail of bewildered and humiliated victims in their wake.
I want to say more than bewildered and humiliated. Why? Because the victims are men. Does the media describe bewilderment and humiliation just because they're men and the women are criminals? If the victims were women and 2 men had done it, we wouldn't be saying they left a trail of bewildered and humiliated women.
No, people would be up in arms.
Absolutely. So why do we change this language? Like, it's ridiculous. Imagine how frightening that would have been and how damaging long term. You meet someone online you think you're going to have a date with and a good time with, only to be stripped, bound, gagged, robbed, fearing for your life. Right?
Yep.
So these women get the men naked, perhaps doing something sexual to get to that point, tied them up and robbed them.
Mm-hmm.
Reality, these men weren't bewildered and humiliated.
Yeah.
These women left a trail of sexually assaulted, physically abused, kidnapped, or forcibly confined men who they robbed. Let's call it what it was.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't some like, ho, look what they did to them. These are horrible women doing horrible things.
Yep, it would have messed with my head. Detectives in Houston were the first to connect the dots, noticing a pattern among the reports of men who had been lured through dating services only to be robbed and left bound and vulnerable. The sophistication and theatricality of the crimes quickly set them apart from typical robberies, prompting authorities to dedicate significant resources to the case. Houston police, led by officers like Alex Hardesty, worked tirelessly to piece together the women's movements. They interviewed victims, gathered forensic evidence from hotel rooms, and traced stolen credit cards as they were used across state lines. One victim, Houston businessman Javid Gondal, later testified at trial about being lured to his home, handcuffed and robbed, a pattern echoed in other victims' accounts. The psychological impact on the victims was significant, as the crimes involved not only financial loss but also humiliation and fear. The women's ability to gain trust and then swiftly shift to intimidation made their crimes particularly traumatic for those targeted. The investigation soon expanded beyond Houston as reports of similar crimes surfaced in Galveston and Las Vegas. Law enforcement in Nevada joined the hunt, sharing information and coordinating efforts with their Texas counterparts. The women's ability to move quickly and assume new identities made tracking them a formidable challenge, and investigators were often left playing catch-up as Stevens and Turford stayed one step ahead. The case took on a life of its own in the media, with reporters seizing on the sensational details and the unlikely partnership at its center. The press dubbed Stevens and Turford the Canadian Thelma and Louise, a reference to the iconic film about two women on the run from the law. Headlines splashed their faces across front pages, and news anchors recounted the bizarre and humiliating scenarios their victims endured. The moniker stuck, fueling public fascination and adding a layer of myth to the unfolding manhunt. Authorities later estimated that Stevens and Turford accrued as much as $250,000 during their crime spree. This figure included stolen cash, credit cards, jewelry, and other valuables taken from their victims. As the investigation intensified, authorities finally caught up with Stevens and Turford in Houston. The pair were arrested and brought before a judge, where the full extent of their alleged crimes was laid bare. Given the severity and premeditation of the robberies, bail was set at a staggering $500,000 each, a sum intended to ensure they would remain behind bars while awaiting trial. The pair were able to secure their release on a combined $500,000 bail thanks to the support of their families. Stevens' father and Turford's parents and in-laws put up family property as collateral, trusting the women would comply with court orders. Houston bail bondsman Clement Romeo handled the bond. Still, just a day after being released, Stevens and Turford vanished, leaving their relatives at risk of losing their homes and thrusting Romeo into a desperate search to avoid the financial fallout. Their flight left law enforcement scrambling to pick up their trail once more. Their escape triggered a nationwide and eventually an international search. Police circulated wanted posters, and the media breathlessly reported on every possible sighting. The Thelma and Louise fugitives became folk anti-heroes, their story captivating the public even as authorities warned of the seriousness of their crimes. The chase was on, with law enforcement in Texas, Nevada, and eventually Canada all working in concert to bring the pair to justice. We'll be right back after this break. When we return, the chase heats up as the Canadian authorities join the hunt, and the true nature of Stevens and Turford's partnership comes into question. Stay tuned. And we are back. Matthew, thoughts? You've written a lot here.
Yeah, I have, because I just find it I understand why, because I understand the world, right?
Well, you understand the world like you understand the world.
Absolutely, which is the right way. And
oh no,
you know, so often when women are perpetrators, we temper the language, we soften the tone, we look for reasons to explain it away. When men do terrible things, we use words like predator or mastermind. But when women do the same thing, especially women like Rose, suburban, white, nurse, mother, suddenly it becomes, she must have been coerced. She was manipulated. This isn't really who she is. And like, let's be honest, motherhood is not a personality trait.
Right.
right? Like anyone can have a kid, right? It doesn't cancel out personal agency. It doesn't mean someone is capable of lying and stealing, humiliating, or even hurting people. And yet, because of who Rose was in sort of the eyes of society and had kids, people want to see her as someone who just got pulled along. Like somehow the mom part of her,
hold her up as Mother Mary kind of.
like the mom part of her can't exist at the same time as a criminal part, right? Like that doesn't make sense to me. But she lived a double life for months. She ran, she lied to her family, she didn't stop. And that's not just manipulation, that's participation.
Yep.
This was an ongoing, they were like going across the country, robbing and sexually assaulting and kidnapping men. That is not manipulation. And if we keep giving women, especially mothers, a softer lens in stories like this, we're not being fair. Not to the victims, not to the truth, and honestly, not even to women themselves. It's actually it's insulting for women.
It's a patriarchal look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like anything a man can do, a woman can do. Anything a woman can do, man can do. Like I'm one of these complete, it's all equal people. So we have to look at people when they're being bad as equal as well.
After Carolyn and Rose vanished from Houston, skipping their $500,000 bail, their story exploded into a sensation that captivated both sides of the border. What followed was a months-long chase, highlighted by wild rumors, false sightings, and a relentless search that stretched from Texas to the heart of Canada. Almost immediately after their disappearance, Stevens and Turford became the subject of near-mythic speculation. Their faces appeared on wanted posters from, quote, Corpus Christi to Calgary, and their exploits were featured on shows like Unsolved Mysteries and A Current Affair. Reports flooded in from across North America. The pair were allegedly seen posing as nuns in Toronto, playing the casinos in Michigan, and even performing as topless dancers in strip clubs. Sometimes they were described as blondes, sometimes as redheads, and occasionally as bald. Their ability to change appearances and assume new identities fueled the public's fascination and the authorities' frustration. The chase became so notorious that, as one Los Angeles Times article put it, quote, they've been cited about as often as Elvis, end quote. The rumors grew more outlandish with each passing week as the women seemed to slip through the fingers of bounty hunters, private investigators, and police alike. Bail bondsman Clement Romeo, who was left responsible for the bond, became obsessed with finding them and even offered a $25,000 reward for their capture. Quote, I think those girls are in hog heaven every time they see their mugshots on TV, remarked Nancy Smith, the private investigator on the case. As the investigation intensified, Canadian law enforcement, including the RCMP, joined the hunt. Sightings of Stevens and Turford were reported in cities across Canada, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, Montreal, and various towns in Ontario. Turford's Canadian roots and family connections added urgency to the search. Police suspected they might seek refuge with Rose's relatives or friends, and the cross-border nature of the case brought in cooperation between the American and Canadian authorities. The RCMP and local police worked in tandem, following up on tips and monitoring possible hideouts. The women's ability to blend in, use of false names, and the fact that they moved quickly made tracking them a formidable challenge. One confirmed development came in late June when Stevens, using her real identification, rented a car near Edmonton, Alberta. The vehicle would soon become a crucial clue in the case. In early July of 1995, the rental car Stevens had obtained in Edmonton was found abandoned in Toronto. Inside, investigators discovered a handwritten note addressed to the rental agency apologizing for the lateness of the return. Stevens had even signed it. This odd gesture gave the police a sign that the fugitives had indeed made it to Ontario and were likely hiding somewhere in the Toronto area.
That's hilarious. Sorry we stole your car.
Sorry.
That's something I would do. Oh, I just feel bad. That rep at the desk was so nice, and now he's going to be in trouble.
Oopsie daisy, we stole your car and drove it from Edmonton to Toronto.
Hilarious.
The discovery of the car renewed the search in Toronto and surrounding areas. Police canvassed neighborhoods, checked hotels, and followed up on dozens of reported sightings. Rose's family ties in Ontario were scrutinized, and the women's backgrounds dissected by both law enforcement and the media in the hope of getting some clue as to where they were. The case's notoriety only grew. The public eagerly followed each twist in the saga as the media happily reported it. Despite their resourcefulness, Stevens and Turford's time on the run was running out. The international dragnet, the mounting pressure from both police and bounty hunters, and the relentless attention from the media made it increasingly difficult for them to remain hidden. Yet for months they managed to elude capture, their legend growing with every new, sometimes silly rumor and sighting. Ultimately, it was a tip from a vigilant Canadian that led to their arrest in Toronto, bringing up an end to one of the most remarkable cross-border chases of the decade. On a Wednesday evening in early October 1995, police, acting on information provided by a co-worker, descended on a downtown phone sex service where Turford had been working under a false name. She was arrested without incident. Her double life as a suburban nurse and a wanted criminal was over. Meanwhile, Stevens was located in a modest apartment in Etobicoke, a suburb on Toronto's western edge, where she had been living quietly in a senior's residence. Both women were taken into custody and charged with immigration violations and outstanding warrants from Texas, ending a cross-border manhunt that had transfixed the public for months. Detective Sergeant Bob Montrose of the Toronto Police described the months-long pursuit as, quote, a merry chase, expressing both relief and satisfaction that the search had finally, quote, paid off with the women's capture. The collaboration between Canadian and U.S. law enforcement was key, as warrants and extradition requests were processed swiftly to ensure the women would be returned to Texas to face charges. The story dominated headlines on both sides of the border the morning after their capture. The press, of course, reveled in the Thelma and Louise moniker and emphasized the audacity of the two seemingly ordinary women who had orchestrated such a dramatic crime spree. In court, Turford's appearance was described as short and sweet, while Stevens' extradition hearing was quickly scheduled, signaling the seriousness with which authorities treated the case. The wheels of justice were not turning slowly. Public reaction was a mix of disbelief and fascination. Friends, family, and former colleagues in Ontario struggled to reconcile the woman they knew with the sensational details emerging from the investigation about Rose Turford. "It doesn't make any sense," Turford's lawyer Mike Lamson told reporters, reflecting the shock felt by many who had known her as a hard-working nurse and devoted mother. In the United States, the case was followed with equal intensity as authorities and the public alike marveled at the women's ability to evade capture for so long. Who were these two? Had someone been helping them? The speculation was rampant. Once extradited, the women were separated in the Harris County Jail in Houston. Stevens chose to plead guilty to 3 counts of aggravated robbery, accepting a 10-year prison sentence rather than facing a trial. Turford, however, opted to contest the charges in court. Her trial, of course, became a media spectacle. The legal strategies in the courtroom reflected the complex dynamics between the two women. Turford's defense centered on the claim of duress. Her lawyers argued that she had been manipulated and coerced by Stevens, who they portrayed as the true mastermind behind the crime spree. According to Turford's attorney, Mike Lamson, quote, "In the beginning, I really believe Rose was duped by Carolyn. She feared for her children's lives, her husband's. I believe Carolyn went slowly by playing on Rose's compassion, her sense of goodwill to people. She would come in all beat up, and Rose would take care of her," end quote. The defense asserted that Rose Turford's actions were driven by fear for her family's safety, a fear instilled and maintained by Stevens' elaborate stories and psychological games. Prosecutors, however, painted a different picture. They argued that Rose Turford was a willing participant, fully aware of the crimes and actively involved in their planning and execution. The prosecution highlighted the meticulous nature of the robberies and Turford's role in luring victims and carrying out the schemes. Ultimately, the jury sided with the prosecution, finding Turford guilty and rejecting the notion that she was merely a pawn in Stevens' game.
Yeah, I'd side with the prosecution and the jury as well.
Me too. I mean, there are two sides to every story, but I don't know. This was a defense and not necessarily the truth.
If you think about it, Mike, like so often when a perpetrator gives their side of the story, we always flag, hey, be careful. This is somebody found guilty who's just giving their excuses. And it's no different here because she's a woman.
So central to both the defense and public fascination was this mysterious figure known as Avery. Yet as the investigation unfolded, law enforcement and legal professionals grew increasingly skeptical of Avery's existence. Houston police officer Alex Hardesty stated bluntly, quote, "We feel like this is somebody Carolyn Stevens dreamed up and that Avery is basically Joyce Carolyn Stevens," end quote. Bail bondsman Clement Romeo echoed this view, quote, "Nobody's that smart, nobody's that powerful. I'd be willing to bet anything I own that Carolyn is Avery," end quote. The consensus among investigators was that Avery was a fabrication, a tool Stevens used to manipulate Rose Turford and rationalize their escalating criminal behavior. The other repercussions of the crime and subsequent trials rippled through both women's lives, but the impact was particularly acute for Rose Marie Turford's children in Ontario. Turford, once a suburban mother who drove her kids to baseball practice and volunteered at school, was suddenly absent from their lives. Her 3 sons, ages 4, 11, and 13, were left in the care of relatives as their mother became the subject of international headlines and legal battles. The emotional toll was compounded by the financial strain on both families who had put up property as collateral for the women's bail, assets that were at risk when Stevens and Turford fled. Rose's family and friends in Ontario expressed disbelief and sorrow, struggling to reconcile the loving mother and nurse they knew with the sensational details emerging from the courtroom. For Rose's children, the ordeal meant not only the loss of their mother's presence, but also the stigma and confusion that accompanied their family's sudden notoriety. The saga of Joyce Carolyn Stevens and Rose Marie Turford has left a lasting imprint on the cultural imagination in both the U.S. and Canada. The legacy of Stevens and Turford's partnership also prompts a reflection on broader themes of gender, crime, and friendship. Their story complicates traditional narratives about female criminality, highlighting how manipulation, psychological coercion, and intense emotional bonds can be as influential as greed or malice. The Avery myth, whether interpreted as a tool of control or a symptom of psychological distress, adds further complexity to the question of agency and responsibility.
For me, that's a generous take, and sure, psychology plays a role, but we have to be careful not to let complexity become excuse. Manipulation and, quote, emotional bonds are real, but they don't erase agency. Rose wasn't some wide-eyed passenger. She made decisions. She executed plans. She left her kids behind and disappeared. Maybe she was pulled to some degree, but in the back of her head, even at the beginning, I bet she knew it was up, but she chose to jump. And when you wrap these choices in words like coercion or emotional entanglement, especially when we're talking about women, it starts to sound more like protection rather than reflection.
What are you Johnny Cochran with your rhyming here? Projection rather than reflection.
That was just by chance. And, if these were 2 men doing the same thing, would we be even having this conversation?
Well, we'd be having a different conversation entirely, yeah. After her conviction in March 1996, Rose Marie Turford was sentenced to 30 years in prison for aggravated robbery. The sentence required that she serve at least 15 years before being eligible for parole. She applied to be transferred back to Canada to serve her sentence closer to her children, but authorities denied her request. The Ontario College of Nurses subsequently revoked her registration, permanently ending her nursing career and severing her last tie to her previous life as a respected caregiver. Quote, "Nurse in Thelma and Louise case loses Ontario license," reported the Toronto Star in 1997. Today, both women have receded from the public eye. Joyce Carolyn Stevens served her sentence in Texas and upon release has kept a low profile, her life as a preacher's daughter forever overshadowed by her criminal notoriety. Rose Marie Turford, after serving her time in the U.S., returned to Canada, but her career and reputation were irreparably damaged. And that's it for Dark Poutine episode 377, The Canadian Thelma and Louise, Rose Turford, and Carolyn Stevens.
That's right.
It's time for voicemails. You can leave us a message at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see who called us this week.
Alrighty, let's listen to our first voicemail. You ready, Matthew?
I am.
Hey guys, this is Nikita calling from Nova Scotia, sending you lots of East Coast love. Fun fact I wanted to share with you that I learned today that despite having been sunk for over 100 years, the Titanic pool is still full of water. Thanks. Go shit in your hat.
Oh no. I've heard the joke before, but I like it, and it's one that I love every single time. Oh boy.
That's funny.
Oh, Nikita from Nova Scotia. I wonder where in Nova Scotia she lives, Matthew. I think I'm going to put on my thinking cap here because I know Nova Scotia very well.
Yeah.
I think she is from Ecum in Nova Scotia. She's from a place called Ecum.
Okay. Ecum.
Yeah, Ecum. That is actually a place in Nova Scotia. And what do you think she does there in Ecum, Matthew? What does Nikita do?
I like Nikita as a woman's name. I learned it as it's like a man's name in Russia.
Yep. I've heard both. Yep.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful name. I think she's the former prime minister of the Soviet Union.
She's a former. Oh, okay. So is her last name is Khrushchev?
Yeah. She's had some work done since those days.
Had some work done. And she's busy banging her shoe on the table there in Ecum.
Yeah, Ecum. Now she's on the Ecum town council.
Right. And people are like, what is with Nikita Khrushchev?
She didn't do quite a good job with the Soviet Union, so she's been demoted.
Oh, boy. Well, thank you, Nikita, and thank you for the fun fact about the Titanic and its pool.
It actually took me a minute to get that.
Of course it did. Okay, let's move on. We've got another few voicemails here.
Excellent.
Hi, guys. My name is Megan. I'm calling to say I like you. I just finished this week's episode, and it was great, as per usual. A very sad story, but the way that you capture these stories is always very thoughtful and appreciated. So thanks, and go shit in your hat, I suppose. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, Megan. Did Megan say where she was from? I don't think she did.
No, she did not.
Oh, boy. Okay, so where's Megan from, Matthew?
I think she's from Winterpeg.
She's from Winterpeg.
Yeah.
Okay. And what does she do there in Winterpeg?
I had a friend when I was young who was a ballerina.
Okay.
So I like to think that all Megans are ballerinas.
Okay. Well, there you go. I had a friend who was a ballerina once.
Do we still use that word, or do we say ballet dancer?
But I think it's ballet dancer now because it degenderizes it. I don't know.
Anyway, ballerina / ballet dancer.
She slashed a ballet dancer?
Well, if she's actually with the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow, then they have been known to like slash and throw acid on each other's faces and stuff to try to get ahead. So there you go.
Like in that movie Showgirls, where she gets pushed down the stairs by the other dancer, so she can be essentially the lead.
Yeah, that stuff happens. So I think Megan, I don't know if we want to put that on Megan. I don't know. I don't think she'd actually do that.
No, it doesn't say sound like that.
She has the talent. She doesn't need to.
Judging from a 22-second voicemail, I mean, seriously, doesn't seem like that.
No, and she has the talent, so she doesn't need to do shenanigans.
Shenanigan.
Let's listen to another.
Hi, Mike. It's Karen from Ireland. I can't, and Matthew, I forgot about him. I can't get on Facebook Yummy Art because my phone broke a few weeks ago. I can't log into Facebook. I've forgotten my password. So I'm just reaching out to you because you got no voicemail in the last few weeks. I tell you one thing. There's a lot of crime going on in America, especially in Iowa, but we're all sorts of craziness and elsewhere. And good form. You're keeping me going with the laughs and the joy, and the last few episodes have been really powerful to listen. Matthew did a great job a few weeks ago about the case about LGBT. I know it is not an easy subject for you to talk about, but it is important that we talk about these, have these conversations. Mind yourselves, Waffle and Steve, Justin as well, Slán from Ireland, Karen from Ireland. Take care. Bye.
Oh, I love you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. If you're not from Ireland or Newfoundland, you may have trouble understanding a bit, but you know what? So what? It's fantastic. These voicemails from her are fantastic.
Oh, I think because I lived in the UK for so long and went to Ireland so much that my ears are tuned to different accents, and it's I love the Irish accent so much.
Me too.
I have a lot of Irish friends in Vancouver.
Yeah, I do too.
It's incredible how many young Irish people are here, isn't it?
Yeah, I wonder what that's about. I don't know, like why they land in Vancouver.
And it's so funny. I know like 15 people from Bray, which is just outside of Dublin. And it's like, and whenever I meet another person from Bray, I'm like, is anyone left in Bray?
My friend Alan is from County Cork, where the Brown family is actually from, which is interesting. So, County Cork. They're all fishermen and crazy there. Drink like fish.
When you do an Irish accent, you sound Newfoundland.
Oh, well, it is. It's because Newfoundlanders are from Ireland, essentially. So, anywho, well, thank you so much for your call. And we miss you on the Umber Yard, so please find your login or your, do something to get logged back.
Are you sure your password wasn't password?
Password 1, 2, and 3.
Password 1, 2, 3. Oh, it was 3.
No, it was tree. It was tree.
Tree. Password TRE.
Yes, exactly. Okay, here's another.
Hey, Mike and Matthew. This is Kelsey from California. I've, I think, called once before. You sound sad about not getting voicemail, so despite being a so-called geriatric millennial, us born in 85ers, turning 40 this year, me a few weeks ago, each of my friends in turn crossing that barrier, phones were fun through maybe late middle school, early high school, and then text-based conversations really took over for my generation, I think, or at least, met some members of it. So I believe this voicemail should count as at least like 3 to 5 normal voicemails from people who don't hate phones. Consider it a millennial credit. I hope you will enjoy it appropriately and go shit in your hat.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. Yes, Kelsey from California. Matthew, what does Kelsey do there in California?
Well, not make many phone calls.
Right. So she's not working in a phone, like a call center or anything like that.
I think that Kelsey says she's turning 40 soon, right?
Yeah.
Enjoy it, Kelsey. So from an old codger here, when you're at your 40s, you are at the height of your powers, right?
It's true.
For me, 40s were great because I had all of the knowledge I'd gained, but still all of the energy. 40s are fantastic. So leap into them. 30s are weird. 20s are fun. 30s are weird. 40s rock. So happy birthday coming up.
And 50s are nifty.
I think Kelsey owns her own advertising agency.
Yeah. Okay, good. Kelsey owns her own advertising agency. Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
There you go. That's it for this week's voicemails. Again, you can leave us one at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you, even if it is just to say hi and to tell us to go shit in our hats. If you're stumped for what to chat with us about, a quick story is welcome. Okay, we're on to Patreon and Donut Money donors. We have a new patron, and that person is Shaughnessy Beatty from Weymouth, Nova Scotia, Canada. Weymouth. Yeah, my stomping grounds around there. So where on earth is Shaughnessy, or what does Shaughnessy Beatty Beatty, Do in Weymouth, Matthew. And his Shaughnessy is spelled Shaunacy. Shaughnessy.
As you know, Mike, Shaughnessy is like the posh old money neighborhood of Vancouver.
Right.
So I like to think that Shaughnessy is just posh lady who lunches.
There you go.
Shaughnessy doesn't have to do anything.
There you go.
And she deserves it.
Of course. Moving on to Donut Money Donors. We have two. Travis Doolin. Travis doesn't say where. Travis says that he is from the Golden Triangle of BC. Okay, I don't know what that is. Maybe, Matthew, you can Google that. Enjoy some Nanaimo bars from funds from the Golden Triangle of BC. I don't know where that is. The Golden Triangle of BC. So the Golden Triangle of BC is a loosely defined mining district in northwestern British Columbia known for its rich deposits of gold, silver, and copper. Interesting. So it's way up there, roughly situated between Stewart and moving north toward the Alaskan Panhandle and south of the Yukon border.
It's so cool that Travis is up there listening to us. We haven't heard anyone from. That's cool. I want to go up there sometime.
I would love to visit more of British Columbia. I really would. It's such a big province.
We're schlubs working all the time.
We are definitely workaday schlubs.
Well, thank you, Travis. And I think Travis feels like, to quote, was it Cowboy Junkies? He feels like he's dying from mining for gold.
No, I don't.
Remember that song? I feel like I'm dying from mining for gold.
Okay, that's a nice song. Anywho, well, thank you, Travis, very much.
Thanks so much, Travis.
Next, we have Janet LaFrance. And Janet, I don't know where Janet's from, but she says, Mike and Matt, I really enjoy the show. Heard about it from my husband's coworker at a barbecue back in May. Been binging episodes whenever I can, but not in order. Also made a case submission. Yes, got your case submission? And we've gotten so many. I am like, okay, we've got another 5 years of shows at least, which is kind of fun. Hopefully the money holds out for that long. It looks like about 3 months now. But anyway.
Just drop that in.
Yeah, Donut Money Donors help.
They certainly do.
So where is Janet LaFrance from, Matthew? Is she from France?
No, she's from England.
From England, okay.
And she moved to Canada because everyone kept on getting on her back because her last name is LaFrance because, the traditional enemy of the English were the French.
Sure.
So she moved to Canada.
Yep.
And she lives right on the border of Quebec and Ontario.
Okay. Interesting. Well, because there's lots of French-speaking people and English-speaking people there.
And to quote the Rocky Horror Picture Show, damn it, Janet, we love you.
Aw. Well, thank you.
I love that she heard about it at a barbecue.
Yeah.
About us at a barbecue.
Someone was chatting about us at a barbecue in May. That's very nice.
Somebody I work with in my new job, we started talking and I mentioned that I do this as like a side hobby. And she's like, oh my God, I listen to that show. So I have a work colleague that didn't recognize my voice, but then was like, oh my God, you're that Matthew, which is funny.
Well, there you go. Well, hello. Shout out to your new colleague.
Yeah.
Thanks to all our patrons and Donut Money donors, past and present, for your generosity. It helps to keep the show going. You can become a patron of Dark Poutine at patreon.com/darkpoutine. For a one-time donation, you can send us donut money via PayPal or interact using our email address, darkpoutinepodcast@gmail.com. If you don't already subscribe to the show, it would mean a lot if you did. You can easily find Dark Poutine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. If you haven't gotten yours yet, my 2 books are available to order via links on the Dark Poutine website or anywhere fine books are sold. And speaking of darkpoutine.com, check it out for show notes and other cool stuff. We'd appreciate it if you gave Dark Poutine a like or a follow on Facebook and Instagram.
Most importantly, thank you for listening. Tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is a powerful thing. And that's it for this episode of Dark Poutine. So until next time, don't forget to be a good egg and not a bad apple.
Don't be a bad apple.
Bye.
Bye.